But I came across an episode of his podcast and this one segment that I just thought was unimaginably profound. And it's exactly what we're talking about. In fact, it meaningfully impacted the way I was thinking about what we're talking about here. But he was in a conversation with a friend, colleague of his, Andrew Doyle. He's an atheist. And I forget what Doyle's profession is or what he does. But he asks Doyle, when they start talking about the arts, and Peterson thinks that they point to something. And he asks Doyle, is there a subordinate unity, which this is a very Peterson phrase, right? Is there a subordinate unity at which the arts aim? And is that unity not equivalent to the monotheistic spirit? So you see what he's asking here. And he knows it too, because he could see Doyle's face in the interview. He goes, I know I'm asking a major question. But Peterson's basically asking, do the arts point toward the existence of God? And Peterson, he elaborates. He says, something makes the arts, and it's their movement towards beauty. So his question is, are the arts unified? If they're moving towards something, if we accept that premise, what is that something that they're moving to? And Doyle comes back real quick and responds. I mean, he's interested and curious himself about this question. He's not defensive. This isn't a combative, thinking like Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse atheists or whatever. This was very friendly back and forth. And part of Doyle's response is that art, is mysterious. It's hard to define these things. It's hard to define beauty. And he makes a point about that. Part of the beauty in the arts is the diversity and how they manifest different perspectives on life through different temperaments and whatnot. And he's focusing on the diversity of manifestations, and that's what makes, art beautiful. But Peterson comes back pretty strong, pretty quickly and animated. He says, it's not just there's variety and it. He says, and it. And Doyle's quick to go, oh yeah, I agree. Because Peterson argues there's a qualitative difference between presentations of worldview. And in a really witty remark, he says, Dostoevsky trumps 50 Shades of Grey. And even if, and this is what Peterson's getting at, he doesn't say this, this is my added commentary here. Even if you have a pleasurable experience in consuming 50 Shades of Grey, Peterson's making an argument. You still know that Dostoevsky trumps it. Even if reading his works were harder, that maybe not even in a sense, not as pleasurable. He's saying Dostoevsky trumps 50 Shades of Grey. And so what Peterson said, what he thinks this means is there's a hierarchy of rank with the arts. And the hierarchy isn't the standard for where you rank isn't simply pleasure. It isn't simply, I enjoyed this more than this, therefore it's better. And what was interesting is Doyle agreed with this 100%. They found they were on the exact same page. They both believed that there's a hierarchy in the arts, that the hierarchy and the ranking isn't built upon simply pleasure. So Peterson goes on to say, that this hypothesis that he's putting forward is that there is something great that the arts and the artists are aiming for. And Doyle chimes back in and he says, well, what he thinks it is that the arts produce the numinous in us. And numinous is the feeling of the divine, like the feeling of transcendence. And Doyle believes it exists, that this is something we feel. We have this experience that is spiritual in nature, religious in nature, whatever it is. It's a feeling of it. So you can think of times in your life where you've had this, if you're a Christian and you're at church, you're part of a service, and you have this feeling of the divine. That's what the word numinous is used to refer to. And even atheists believe that it exists. It's a real thing. But he goes on, Doyle says, so he agrees, the arts produce this in us. He says, but I don't think that proves there is a God. It just points to the existence of something beyond ourselves that we require in order to have a satisfactory life. And then Peterson, everybody should watch this. It's a great bit, great clip, not a bit. It wasn't like a comedic joke, but Doyle says, I don't think it points to God. It just points to something outside of us that we require in order to have a satisfactory life. And there was this moment's pause where Peterson then just gets this wry grin and goes, that sounds a lot like God. And then he laughs. And then they move on because they're at a place where Doyle doesn't agree. And in respect, they find something that they can agree on, is how the postmodern movement is essentially godless, and the conversation is over and they've moved on. But you see what's nagging Peterson, right? If we believe that the arts do point to something, and many atheists would agree.
Yeah.
The arts point to something. There's a hierarchy here, which means some art is closer to this greatness than others. Well, what is that thing then? What is it that it points to? And Doyle has no answer for that. And his answer just left Peterson in a place like, well, that's what I'm thinking all along. What you just said sounds exactly like God.